Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees. And please put a review on my podcast. That will certainly help in getting the word out there and creating more listenership. Episode 201. John Hall Waugh. The Waugh family were born in Scotland and emigrated, becoming prominent pastoralists in the late 1800s. John Hall Waugh was born on the 22nd of June 1836 in far Sutherland, Scotland, to William Waugh and Agnes Jane Hall. He was second born to 8 children. By June 1860, he was running the Canargo Run near Deniliquin, New South Wales. He married Johanna Cameron in Deniliquin, New South Wales on the 28th of November 1861 when he was 25 and Johanna 20. They had 5 children and Johanna was also Scottish. On the 6th of September 1922, in the Riverine Recorder, a Balranald and Moolameen newspaper, there was his obituary. The death is announced of Mr. John Waugh of Clare Station, which took place at his residence, Killara, Sydney, on the 20th at the age of 86. He was born in Scotland and came to Victoria as a young lad and spent some time in the neighbourhood of Ballarat during the digging days. He afterwards came over to New South Wales, where his expert knowledge of sheep brought him into close association with graziers on the Murrumbidgee River above Hay. In May 1881, in conjunction with Stanbridge and Mears, he purchased and took delivery of Clare Station from the Honorary William Campbell, who had in 1869 bought the property from the bank as mortgagees of the late Hugh Glass, with 120,000 sheep. Mr. Waugh improved the property considerably and had the wool shed removed and extended to hold 63 shearers, and otherwise facilitated the working of the station by improving drafting yards and other conveniences. In 1882, 200,000 sheep were shorn on Clare Station, but the 1884 Crown Lands Act, with the subdivision holdings, reduced the area held by the station considerably. Later on, Mr. Waugh purchased Golgeldry and Urangabilly stations, and for the past 10 or 12 years he's resided in Sydney. In some of his earlier pastoral investments, he was associated with Joseph and William McGaw, and also his brother William Waugh, now deceased. The late Mr. Waugh was a thorough judge of merino sheep and wool and had a very wide experience of the pastoral industry in the Riverina. He was well known to the older generation of pastoralists, the majority of whom have now gone west. He leaves 3 sons, Mr. W.A. Waugh, who now manages Clare Station, John and Alan, all of whom are interested in station properties, and 1 daughter, Mrs. W.F. Parkinson of Christchurch, New Zealand. And another article on the 1st of September 1922 in the Hay Riverine Grazier. Referring to the death of Mr. John Waugh, Sr., the senior correspondent of the Melbourne Argus says, Mr. John Waugh, whose passing was recorded this morning, was one of the Riverina pioneers who won wealth. He went there about 60 years ago and acquired control of various pastoral properties. Mr. Waugh was along past the 70 mark when he retired from the life on the land and came to Sydney to spend the remainder of his days at the pleasing North Shoreline suburb of Killara. In connection with this paragraph, it might be mentioned that Mr. Waugh was in charge of the Euralee portion of Burrabogie in 1869 and afterwards went to Cuba. It also mentioned he was one of the best judges of cattle and merino sheep in the state. His siblings who came to Australia, his brother William Waugh was mentioned. William Waugh was born in 1835 in far Sutherland, Scotland, and he died on the 24th of April 1917 at his residence, Barellan in Randwick, and it says laid of Clare and Golgeldry stations in the Riverina, aged 81. William was a pioneer of the pastoral industry of the state and one of the good old stock who have helped so much to make Australia such a factor in the world of livestock. Conscientious and civil, upright and honest in all of his dealings, he was a man to whom many prosperous businessmen and men on the land can look back on and thank for their position today through the unostentatiousness, help and advice. He was reputed to be one of the shrewdest judges of pastoral matters in the state. The late Mr. Waugh was born in the Sutherland Shire in Scotland and came to Australia in 1858. He started straight away on the land, going to Bunnock Station for experience, and after a few months he took on the job of overseer at Tubber Station in the Riverina. He then took over the management of Yarrabee Station, where he managed that for 4 or 5 years. He then went to the North Golgeldry Station, owned by Mr. Geoffrey McKinnon. In 1873, he left and joined partnership with Mr. Gordon in Burrellan Station. It had cattle on it at the time, but Mr. Waugh cleared the cattle and stocked it with sheep. He sold over 40,000 sheep in 1877 to Mr. Bailey on the Murrumbidgee. He then ran Dungalee Station near Walgett in partnership with Mr. Gordon. He sold his share in 1881 to Mr. Campbell with 80,000 sheep. In December of 1881, he joined his brother, Mr. John Moore, at Clare Station near Mossgiel. In 1889, he went to Golgeldry Station as partner of Waugh, Stanbridge and Waugh, and remained with them until 3 years ago when the government resumed it for the Yanco irrigation scheme. The late Mr. Waugh was not married. On the 8th of January 1918, in the Sydney Stock and Station Journal, it announces the will of the late Mr. William Waugh. Probate has been granted of the will of Mr. William Waugh, grazier, who died at Randwick on the 24th of April. He left an estate of the net value of £66,737, 3 shillings and 4 pence. He bequeathed certain annuities to relatives and friends and £500 to Thomas Collis, his solicitor, conditionally on his accepting the office of executor. £100 each to the Narrandera Hospital and the Presbyterian Church at Whitton, a year's wages to persons who had been at the time of his death in his employ for longer than 12 months, and the residue of his estate to his trustees in trust for his nephews, William Angus Waugh, John Waugh Jr., Alan James Bruce Waugh, sons of his brother John, in equal shares. He desired that his remains should be interred in the Presbyterian section at Randwick Cemetery, that a headstone of Scotch granite should be erected above his grave, and that provision should be made for keeping his grave and those of his sister and brother in order for 40 years. The next sibling was Henry Hall Waugh, who was born in 1839 in far Sutherland, Scotland, and he died on the 15th of October 1922 in Corryong, Victoria, at the age of 83. He was a grazier and owned Braymore at Berringamma, and he was in his 83rd year. He'd only been ailing for 12 months and was only in the hospital for 1 week before his death. He was born in Scotland and came out when he was 24. He managed various stations in New South Wales, eventually coming to Lucy Vale to manage it for Mr. Bear. He then purchased the present holding and settled in the Corryong district 30-odd years ago. He was respected throughout the district and leaves a wife and grown-up family. Harry, Roy, Fred, Dick, Elliot and Alan, one son Elf having been killed in the war, and daughters Mrs. J. Cowley of Comden, Mrs. A. Whitehead of Toowong, Mrs. Les Bryant of Gillenbar, and Miss Annie of Berringamma. And the third sibling was George, who was born in 1855 in Sutherland, Scotland, and he died on the 26th of February 1911 in Randwick, New South Wales, aged 56. And his death notice states, George Waugh, late of Christchurch, New Zealand. John Hall Waugh's children. The firstborn was William Angus Waugh, who was born in Wagga Wagga on the 17th of September 1862. He married Hannah Manuel Campbell in Leichhardt, New South Wales, on the 12th of April 1894, when he was 31 and Hannah 26. They had 7 children. In 1897, he was on Clare Station at Barranald, and he died on the 13th of June 1938 in Wagga at the age of 75. On his death, it mentions that Mr. William Angus Waugh of Clare, Hay and Stockdale, Gobberalong, New South Wales, a well-known riverine grazier, died at Wagga on Monday night after a short illness. He was the son of the late John Moore of Golgeldry and Clare Stations and was educated at Geelong College and took a leading part in movements associated with the pastoral industry. He was president of the Ivanhoe Pastures Protection Board and actively associated in the affairs of such bodies as the Graziers Association of the Southern Riverina and the Western Lessees Association. It also says the Waugh family were among the very early landholders in this district and came to the district long before the irrigation area was considered to be a practical proposition. Survived by a widow and a family of 4 sons and 2 daughters. The sons are Angus, John, Ronald and Gordon, and daughters Isabel, Mrs. Lewis Bell of Elmer Station, and Eileen. His next child was John Anderson Waugh, who was born in 1865 on Yanco Station. In 1937, he was working on Bunnock Station in Carnago, and he died on the 6th of March 1945 in Chatswood at the age of 80. It stated he was of Woodlands in Linfield, and he left £124,414 in his estate. He was a bachelor and he left his real and personal property to be divided between his 2 brothers, William and Alan. The next child was Agnes Jane Waugh. She was born in 1866 in Deniliquin. She married Walter Fox Parkinson, a New Zealander, in 1892, and they had 2 children. And Agnes died on the 6th of May 1950 in Christchurch, New Zealand, aged 84. The next child was Alan James Bruce Waugh, who was born in 1868 in Hay. He married Una Amelia Harvey in 1898, and they had 2 children, Douglas and Alan, and he died on the 16th of April 1932 in Queensland. In the Inverell Times on the 18th of March 1932, it announces his death. Mr. Alan Waugh, one of the best-known pastoralists in New South Wales and Queensland, died suddenly at the Goondiwindi Hospital on Saturday morning. He was in Goondiwindi on Friday, seemingly in good health and spirits, and left by car for his home at Copper-Murrumbilla Station. He was discovered on Saturday morning at a gate, unconscious, by Mr. Lindsay McCoyle. It appears that he left the car to open the gate when he had a seizure and remained there all night. The track was a private one, consequently he was not discovered until the morning. Mr. McCoyle had him removed to the Goondiwindi Hospital where he died. Mr. Waugh owned Copper-Murrumbilla and North Callandoon stations in the Goondiwindi district and Talawanta station near Brewarwina. He also owned a large freehold property near Scone. He had a paralytic stroke. He's survived by his widow, 1 daughter Kathleen, and 3 sons Alan, Douglas and Max. And on the 18th of February 1933, in the Brisbane Courier, it announces the estate of Alan James Bruce Waugh, says that it's been granted to his widow and his son, Alan C. Waugh, and it was sworn in at probate at £274,920. It does say, though, that the late Mr. Waugh died interstate, so his estate passes on to his widow and 4 children. However, a little over 5 years later, in the Sydney Labour Daily, after administration of £108,178, state has been granted last year on the basis that Alan James Bruce Waugh, grazier, died interstate, his will was found in his city office. Waugh died in 1932, leaving 4 stations. It was believed that he left no will. However, on September the 22nd, 1937, a will was found in the Bligh Street office of a land and finance firm, which the deceased had transacted business. Yesterday, His Honour revoked the letters of administration he granted in respect to the supposed intestacy. So on the 24th of November 1939, in the Brisbane Courier Mail, says Grazier's Queensland estate, £89,606. This consisted of £75,619 realty and £13,987 personality. And this was left by Alan James Bruce Waugh, grazier, who died in April 1932. So as a result of this adjustment, the judge was told that the copy of the will and the codicil made by Waugh was found after administration. It was granted to his widow. The widow is now deceased, so the beneficiaries of the will are his 3 sons, Alan Cameron Waugh, Malcolm Waugh and Douglas Waugh. And another child, Dr. Henry George Waugh, was born on the 23rd of November 1871 at Cooper Station at Darlington Point in New South Wales, and he died on the 4th of July 1911 in Brisbane. Dr. Henry Waugh. Many of your readers will remember the doctor who some years ago practiced at Narrandera. Of late he's been in indifferent health, but it was only a fortnight prior to his death his condition caused any anxiety. Dr. Waugh was only 39. He was born in 1872 at Burrabogie Station and was educated in Geelong and went to Scotland to receive his medical training. He practiced at home for a short time on his return to Australia and then brought his practice to Narrandera. The doctor was of a quiet, unassuming disposition and did not enter much into public affairs, but was thought of very highly of those who knew him, both professionally and privately. Dr. Waugh leaves a widow and 2 children to mourn their loss. So the Waugh family certainly deserved a mention in an episode, particularly when there were several of John Hall Waugh's siblings who didn't have children of their own. So there's only a couple of lines of the family where there are descendants today. If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast, Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.